He knocked me over. I landed on the dog bowl.
This one's wife. Where will it all end up? Update. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. One of the brilliant aspects about my work in relation to narcissists is not only do I enable you to understand why a particular person who is a narcissist behaves as they do, I'm also able to help people understand what is likely to happen next in their dynamic with the narcissist. This ability to predict is invaluable when, for instance, dealing with seeking to escape the narcissist, dealing with a child custody dispute, on which I have advised many people, dealing with a business dispute, dealing with impending divorce or an ongoing divorce. Again, I've advised many people in that regard. By understanding what it is that the narcissist needs, and by understanding the narcissist's perspective, and understanding how the dynamic with the narcissist invariably pans out, this enables me to assist people by explaining to them what is likely to happen next, what is likely to happen in relation to the things that they propose to do, and then they can make an informed decision as to whether they should proceed in that direction or take an alternative course. This expertise and insight can be applied to the dynamic between Harry and this one's wife to predict where it will all end up. I have in the past given some insight in that regard, but given that matters have moved on in the last year or so, I thought it would be useful to aid your understanding and also to scratch that itch that many of you have as to understand where is this going to all end by telling you what I see is going to happen in the future. Now, as you understand, this one's wife is a mid-range narcissist and Harry is her intimate partner primary source victim. That means that he's the most important provider of the prime aims. He's the easiest person to control that provides the most fuel, character traits, and residual benefits. That's why her narcissism drove her to ensnare Harry in the first place. He was seduced and got a golden period when everything was wonderful. She embedded him as the intimate partner primary source. Still in the golden period, everything's hunky-dory. And then came the sustained devaluation, which is what Harry has been experiencing over the last few years. This is marked by respite periods. Respite periods are a return to the golden period. So, what happens? She doesn't talk to Harry for a few days, then everything's okay, and they have some fun together for a few days, then there is an argument, then everything's okay, and then there's more devaluing behaviour. It's the roller coaster ride, which those of you who have been involved with a narcissist will be fully familiar with. The dynamic between the intimate partner primary source and the narcissist only ever has three outcomes. Disengagement by the narcissist, i.e. the narcissist gets rid of the victim, escape by the victim, or neither of those things, and the roller coaster ride continues until one of the parties dies. Let's consider each of those three options and their applicability to the situation involving the Sussexes. Let's start with disengagement. Disengagement is the most common outcome of a narcissistic ensnarement between a narcissist and an intimate partner primary source. Disengagement can also occur in relation to intimate partner secondary sources, people that you're dating, somebody that the narcissist is having an affair with. Non-intimate secondary sources, friends, family, colleagues, neighbours. Although disengagement in those circumstances is rarer for reasons that I've explained separately and I won't go into today. Disengagement is the most common way that a narcissist will get rid of that intimate partner primary source victim, and there are 5 triggers. One of these things has to happen to cause the narcissist to jettison that victim. The first is that the victim causes massive wounding to the narcissist, that they do something that is so substantial that the narcissism basically is shook to its core and thinks, We no longer need to deal with this person because of the wounding that's been caused, and the only effective way of getting rid of them, or rather, the only effective way of halting the wounding, is to get rid of that person. In essence, lawyers would see it as a repudiatory breach by one of the parties that allows the other to free themselves from the contract of ensnarement. Here, is it a situation that Harry would cause massive wounding? Well, he will certainly cause some wounding, and he will do so, often inadvertently. If he fails to respond to a telephone call, if he doesn't reply to a text message promptly enough, if he walks away from this one's wife, if he doesn't go along with her to something when she wants him to, all of those things will wound her, but it's not massive wounding. And I doubt Harry would ever actually cause massive wounding, so I don't see that this is a disengagement trigger that would actually occur. The second one is massive exposure, where the victim basically goes and tells so many people about the behavior that they've been experiencing at the hands of the narcissist that it means that the narcissist's ability to control that intimate partner primary source and reams of tertiary and secondary sources becomes so adversely affected, the only thing that the narcissist can do is jettison that intimate partner primary source and go elsewhere. That massive exposure can have huge consequences for the narcissist if people, of course, believe the information that's provided. It isn't always the case that they do, and often the narcissist, of course, will engage in their own PR campaign to demonstrate that they're the victim of unpleasant smearing, whilst smearing the intimate partner primary source themselves. Even where the narcissist is able to correct things with the people that have been the recipient of the exposing information, the fact is this act of treachery by the intimate partner primary source is so great that in that instance it's unforgivable, and this causes disengagement. Similarly, I don't see that Harry is going to cause massive exposure of this one's wife. If he is going to ever do it, it'll be after she's got rid of him and smeared him, where he might retaliate as a consequence of trying to deal with the things that she has said. But I think that Harry, by his nature, isn't going to expose matters, and furthermore, at a later juncture, when things do go wrong, and they will, it's highly likely that he will come under significant pressure to keep his mouth shut in order to try and preserve his position and that of the extended royal family. Accordingly, I don't see either that Harry would cause massive exposure. So that's 2 triggers out of the 5 that I don't see as happening. What about ones that are more likely then? Number 3 is breakdown. Remember, you are an appliance to the narcissist. You're a toaster. You're a washing machine. You're a tumble dryer. You are expected to anticipate and attend to the various needs and requirements of the narcissist, often on the barest of information. You are meant to behave like that particular appliance, doing what's required of you without question or demurrament. When it comes to breaking down, this is essentially where the victim is no longer able to function, invariably as a consequence of the abuse that has been meted out against them by the narcissist. This means that the victim goes within themselves, so they might not be providing fuel to anywhere near the extent that they're expected to do so. They may lose the lustre of certain character traits and residual benefits, and therefore, in effect, they are seen as a faulty, unreliable, broken down appliance which has to be thrown on the scrap heap. This is a possibility in relation to Harry. He has precarious mental health as a consequence of his vulnerabilities. He appears to be medicating through the use of alcohol and drugs, the extent of which is not entirely clear, but we know that he likes both. He is under sustained devaluing pressure from his wife. He also gets the pincer movement from Doria Ragland getting involved as well. He's isolated from support networks because this one's wife dragged him to Canada and then California. He doesn't have much contact with friends and family. He doesn't even have much contact with in-laws other than Doria, who acts as a lieutenant for her daughter. And therefore, this puts Harry in a rather precarious position. Isolated, vulnerable, and ground down under the various machinations of his wife, there is a distinct possibility that he could have some cause of breakdown which would then result in him being disengaged from. So there is a possibility that that would occur. The fourth potential disengagement trigger is the narcissist finding somebody else, and this is usually the most common disengagement trigger that occurs. Usually, as a consequence of you being in a sustained devaluation and painted black, the narcissism essentially then whispers to the narcissist, you can go and find somebody else. This is why most narcissists cheat in some shape or form, often physically and intimately, but sometimes emotionally, financially, intellectually with other people. As a consequence of this, the narcissist may well start an affair, and that person is painted white. They are seen far more favourably than the painted black, incumbent, intimate partner primary source. And, in some instances, the narcissism simply sees this new person as an excellent replacement for the incumbent IPPS, with the result that the IPPS is jettisoned and the new person is installed as the IPPS overnight. That's why many narcissists segue seamlessly from one relationship to another, because it's already been teed up in the background. This doesn't mean that every affair that a narcissist has will result in that person being appointed to the intimate partner primary source, but there's a good chance that that will happen. This, as I mentioned, is the most common outcome, and therefore, is this something that could be going to happen to Harry? Well, again, potentially so. However, this risk is not as great as it once was. The problem that this one's wife has is actually finding that suitable replacement. The reason being is she has got fame, so she's not after somebody who's necessarily famous. She's got fame or infamy already. She attained that by piggybacking Harry, who was already well known, and of course her involvement in the British royal family. What this one's wife, of course, requires is someone that she can control, who will provide her with lots of fuel. Well, those individuals could be anybody from the milkman all the way up to a president. But then what matters more to her are the character traits and the residual benefits. Thus, the milkman isn't going to be a consideration. She wants somebody that is well connected, that has power, and, importantly, wealth. She has become accustomed to a particular lifestyle, which is a residual benefit, which enables her, of course, to pursue the prime aims. By being wealthy, it enables her to pump out PR puff pieces to control people. By being wealthy, it affords a security detail, which she can triangulate people with. It allows her to have a large house, which she can then use to triangulate people with. It allows her to have staff, which means that she, inherently lazy, is able to delegate the more mundane tasks and focus on, subconsciously, the pursuit of the prime aims. Thus, money as a residual benefit is hugely important to her, especially since she is a somatic narcissist. Thus, she is going to be looking for someone that is powerful and wealthy. Well, the problem that she has got is that because she has made herself so well known, there are many people who are fully aware of her true nature who wouldn't want anything to do with her. If she was less well known, there wouldn't be as much criticism about her circulating the planet on social media and mainstream media. There wouldn't be as much dirt about her that people would go, I'd be wary of getting into the sack with this individual. Furthermore, as she approaches her mid-40s, her charms are less desirable than they once were. She's moderately attractive. However, that attractiveness takes a nosedive in relation to her behaviour, and she doesn't exactly portray herself in a particularly attractive manner in the way, for instance, that she dresses. Thus, she's become overexposed, which has backfired on her because it means that any potential suitors may well recognise that she is this unpleasant, grifting individual and wouldn't want anything to do with her. Her reputation precedes her. Thus, if you were an aged billionaire, which might be somebody that she would go after, you're more likely to have your sights on a 20-year-old hard body, far more attractive, far more appealing, and, of course, you wouldn't necessarily know lots about them in the way that you would with this one's wife. Accordingly, I have little doubt that this one's wife has had attempted nibbles at people in order to try and draw them in. You'll recall that there was the dance that was done with the member of the Getty family, for instance. And given her narcissism, it is likely that she has attempted to seduce certain individuals with the potential for bringing them in and shipping Harry out, and she's failed. I therefore see that she does have a significant problem because her narcissism will want her to attract somebody who's powerful and wealthy, but given her advancing age, given the fact that there are far more attractive people than her, both physically and emotionally and personality-wise, she's got a rather uphill struggle to find somebody of fame and wealth that would have her. If she were, of course, to lower her sights to someone more ordinary, she would be able to find someone quite easily as an intimate partner primary source. But her narcissism is going to be gunning for her to try and find somebody who's powerful and wealthy, and thus that not only narrows the pool, but the fact that she's become overexposed means that those within that pool are more likely to shy away from her. Whilst disengagement by reason of replacing Harry with someone else remains a live issue, and certainly something that she would want, the likelihood of it is actually diminished for the reasons that I've just explained. The final disengagement trigger is that Harry becomes too difficult to control. Liken this to an invading army that has invaded a country and is trying to keep it under control. But there's an insurgency, and eventually the invading force thinks to itself, this is taking too much effort, too much resources, too much like hard work, too many casualties, we're going to leave. It's similar for the narcissist. In essence, the individual who is the victim susses out the narcissist. They might not necessarily realise they are a narcissist, but they realise that there's something wrong with their behaviours and they simply don't want to tolerate it any longer. And thus, the fuel output diminishes. They might start grey-rocking the narcissist, even though that's of limited effectiveness. They may well spend less time with the narcissist. They might even start looking elsewhere for somebody and have an affair. All of those things mean that, in essence, the victim has worked out that there's something not right about the individual who is the narcissist, and they've become too difficult to control. So effectively, the narcissist cuts their losses and goes and finds somebody else, jettisoning the intimate partner primary source first. Is this a possibility in relation to Harry? It is. We can see that he has become increasingly discontented with this one's wife. We've seen the various reactions, etc. And it may well be the case, for instance, as he's going to New York on his own without her, and that he's made trips to the United Kingdom without her, that this continues to increase, which is then viewed by her as him essentially being too difficult to control, and leads to a disengagement trigger. Accordingly, disengagement remains a possibility, and a distinct one. The likely triggers will be either Harry breaks down or he becomes too difficult to control, followed by the possibility of her finding someone else. Thus, that's disengagement. What about escape? This is less common. It's less common because the machinations and manipulations of the narcissist invariably keep the victim in place along with their own emotional thinking. Most victims of narcissists do not do this. I'm being abused. I'm out of here. Instead, they may struggle to see that they're being abused. They say, well, I know that he can be difficult with me, but there are occasions when he's absolutely lovely and I don't want to lose that. Or, it was wonderful with her in the beginning. I need to get back to that. Or, what's gone wrong? I need to sort this out and make amends. Or, I understand sometimes why he kicks off. I can be difficult to live with, etc. So there's a variety of empathic and narcissistic traits which are corrupted by emotional thinking, which cause that victim not to depart, but stay in situ and continue with the relationship. Thus, escape becomes more difficult. Add to that concerns about money, where to go, children, etc. All of those concerns, further corrupted by emotional thinking, as I've explained in other videos, creates a heady brew of manipulations and emotional thinking which stops the victim from escaping. But that's not to say that victims do not escape. They certainly do. Some of you listening may well be escaped victims, and I, of course, help thousands of people with consultation, millions through my videos and blog articles, achieve that freedom that they seek. What about Harry? Well, there's the repeated rumours about him wanting to return to the United Kingdom, and I've talked about that in a separate video. That may well be something that would occur as a consequence of him being fed up of being devalued, or it might be driven by other self-serving factors. But either way, those are more talked about possibilities which heighten the possibility of escape. It's also clear that he's less enamoured with his wife than he used to be. This has been shown by some of the reactions whilst he's been on the faux royal tours to her behaviour, to being shunted into being a spare in his marriage. And all of that might just cause Harry to think, hang on a minute, what have I got myself into? Furthermore, as he has been allegedly reaching out to friends and certain members of the family, that may well give him a taste of what he has missed, which will further increase his desire for escape. Thus, there are now a number of factors which increase the likelihood of escape. But does that mean it's going to happen? Not necessarily. Harry, of course, would want to stay with his children. He would want to preserve the family unit. He is still in the grip of his emotional thinking. His narcissistic trait of pride would mean that he wouldn't want to be seen to have failed, that he wouldn't want to have to return to family who would say, "Told you so." It's also the fact that at the moment, this one's wife doesn't have any alternative options. Her various schemes aren't working. She's failed as an author, failed to make a foray as a politician. She's a failed philanthropist, failed fashion icon, failed with a lifestyle brand. She's failed as a content creator. She's failed as a podcaster. And this means that the only thing that provides her with a modicum of relevance is the man that she married. Therefore, at least for now, the narcissism is going to cause her to have a tight hold on Harry for the purposes of utilization. Thus, whilst there are some increased factors in relation to him escaping, there are also a number of factors which mean that he's likely to stay. The children, preservation of the family unit, being in the grip of the emotional thinking and not wanting to seem to be failed, wanting to try and make things right again, and of course the grip that she has upon him. Thus, what has altered, though, is that there are factors which increase the likelihood of escape that were not necessarily there a year or so ago. That's two of the outcomes. What about the third? She doesn't disengage, he doesn't escape, and the roller coaster continues. Well, again, it's a possibility, but I don't see that as a particularly likely one. And I see that as the least likely of the options. I see it as more likely that this relationship is going to end and there'll be an acrimonious divorce. So you'll have plenty of reasons to buy popcorn in the future. Thus, in summary, what is the position? Disengagement I still see as the likeliest outcome, and the most likely triggers a breakdown or too difficult to control. And therefore I see it as, in the not too distant future, that she will get rid of him. Ideally, her narcissism would prefer that she would have somebody else to go to, but there is the distinct possibility that she would disengage from him without an intimate partner primary source to go to, and this would cause her to seek a substantial financial settlement arising out of the divorce, much of which I suspect would have to be paid by King Charles as hush money. This one's wife would do her best to seek to blackmail the royal family to suggest that she will dish lots of dirt. This is why no memoir has been forthcoming. Her narcissism is keeping that in reserve at this juncture. She would hold that over the royal family to basically say, there's lots of dirt that I can dish about you all, and in particular Harry's behaviour, but if you want to stop me doing so, you've got to pay me X tens of millions. And thus, that residual benefit that she craves will be catered to, which would then mean that she could adjust her sights subconsciously in relation to the intimate partner primary source that she will move on to, because she will eventually do so. Even if she gets rid of Harry by reason of breakdown or him being too difficult to control and divorce follows, and she hasn't gone running into the arms of somebody else, she will do in due course. That's the nature of many narcissists. Accordingly, I still see disengagement as the most likely outcome, but I don't see it as likely as it was a year or two ago. With regard to escape, that's the second most likely outcome, but I see the likelihood of escape having increased. Hasn't yet overtaken disengagement, but it has increased. So it'd be interesting to see if that increases further. For instance, if Harry is able to build some bridges with the royal family, and if the royal family look to intervene in some way. That, of course, will change the dynamic further. Accordingly, disengagement is still the most likely outcome in the next year or so that will be coming their way, all else being equal. Otherwise, Harry may well escape, and the possibility of that is increasing. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with my analysis? Do you think there'll be some different outcome instead? Let me know your observations in the comments section. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.